Let's talk about something that most people don't realize until it's too late, the shocking truth about money in the life of the average person. And I'm not talking about billionaires, hedge funds, or Wall Street investment. I'm talking about everyday people, the people you see at work, in your neighborhood, maybe even in your own family. The numbers are eye-opening, and honestly, they should scare us into taking action. First, let's start with the most surprising fact. Investment, the majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck. Yes, even people earning six figures. Studies show that over 60% of Americans say if their paycheck stopped, they wouldn't be able to cover their expenses for more than a month. Man, think about that for a second. If you're making $100 in a year and still can't cover your bills without your next paycheck, that's not wealth. That's financial quicksand. Next, the average savings rate is shockingly low. In fact, most people save less than 5% of what they make. To put that into perspective, if you earn $50 in a year, that means you're only putting away $2,500 annually. That's not even enough to cover a single major emergency like a car accident, a medical bill, or losing your job. And when you realize that the average American doesn't even have $1,000 in savings, you see why small, unexpected expenses push people into debt so quickly. And speaking of debt, this is where things get even scarier. Debt has quietly become the default lifestyle. The average person carries over $6,000 in credit card debt alone. Add in student loans, car payments, and mortgages, and it's no wonder people feel like they're drowning. Every dollar going toward interest is a dollar stolen from future wealth. The problem isn't that people don't make enough money. It's that they're giving away too much of it to banks and lenders. Finally, let's look at retirement readiness, or rather, the lack of it. Almost half of all working adults have nothing saved for retirement, zero. Even among those who are saving, the average 40-year-old only has about $60,000 in their retirement account. That might sound like a lot until you realize that experts say you need at least $1 million or more to retire comfortably. If people keep going at this pace, the reality is grim. Either they'll have to work much longer than expected, or they'll face a retirement full of financial stress instead of freedom. These are the shocking money stats of the average person, and they're not just numbers, they're a wake-up call. The truth is, financial security isn't about how much you earn, it's about how you manage, save, and invest what you already have. If you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck, tired of feeling trapped by debt, and tired of worrying about the future, the answer isn't waiting for a miracle. It's about taking control today, saving more, cutting expenses, investing consistently, and building a plan that frees you from being just another statistic. Most people believe that once you start earning a good salary, all your financial problems will disappear. It sounds logical. Make more money, live more comfortably, and finally feel secure. But the reality is far from this assumption. The shocking truth is that even people making six figures often live paycheck to paycheck. It's not just those earning minimum wage or struggling at entry-level jobs who face this challenge. It's individuals who, on paper, should be financially comfortable. Yet, investment, they too find themselves in the same stressful cycle of waiting for the next paycheck just to cover their expenses. Why does this happen? A big part of the problem comes down to lifestyle inflation. When someone's income rises, their spending almost always rises with it. Instead of maintaining their previous standard of living and banking the extra income, they upgrade their house, lease a newer car, dine out more frequently, and travel more often. At first glance, this feels like deserved progress, a reward for working hard. But when every raise is followed by more spending, the gap between income and expenses doesn't grow. It remains painfully narrow. The result is that even high earners can be broke behind the scenes, just with fancier bills. Another reason why so many people live paycheck to paycheck is the lack of a real savings plan. Surveys repeatedly show that a majority of households don't have even a single month of expenses saved. Imagine someone making $120,000 a year and driving a luxury car, but not having $1,000 in the bank if their tire blows out. This is far more common than people realize. It's not that people don't want to save, it's that they underestimate the importance of paying themselves first. They let bills, rent, mortgage payments, credit card balances, and discretionary spending eat up their paycheck, and by the time they think about saving, nothing is left. Debt also plays a massive role in this cycle. Many people rely on credit cards as a safety net for expenses they can't cover. The problem is, and credit cards come with high interest rates. And once you start carrying a balance, it becomes harder to escape. For someone earning six figures but juggling car payments, student loans, a mortgage, and thousands in credit card debt, the paycheck is already spoken for before it even arrives. What's left after minimum payments and bills? Almost nothing. And so the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle continues no matter how much income they're bringing in. The psychological burden of this is another overlooked factor. People see the money coming in and assume they should be secure. But when they're constantly stressed about bills, they feel trapped in a paradox. They make good money, yet they're broke. That stress often leads to more impulsive financial decisions. Some people cope with the stress by spending more, hoping that new purchases will bring temporary relief. Others avoid looking at their finances altogether, which only worsens the problem. In both cases, the cycle deepens. Another critical point is that society normalizes this pattern. The culture of showing success outwardly, big homes, fancy cars, designer clothes, pressures people to spend even when they can't afford it. It's easy to get caught in the race of keeping up appearances. What no one sees, however, is the financial anxiety behind the closed doors of those beautiful homes. Statistics confirm this. Surveys show that nearly 65% of Americans, including those with six-figure incomes, admit to living paycheck to paycheck. That means the struggle is not about how much you earn, but how you manage it. The harsh reality is that if someone can't manage $50 in a year, they won't magically manage $150 in. More money amplifies habits. It doesn't fix them. If you save nothing now, a higher salary simply means bigger bills and the same stress. Breaking free from the paycheck to paycheck cycle requires discipline, awareness, and a willingness to prioritize long-term security over short-term indulgence. It's about creating a buffer, an emergency fund, and resisting the urge to inflate your lifestyle every time your income increases. Until that shift happens, even the highest earners will remain in the same situation as those at the very bottom, trapped in a cycle of dependence on the next paycheck. The average savings rate tells a story that is both alarming and revealing about how people handle money. Most households today save less than 5% of what they earn, which is dangerously low given the unpredictable nature of life. To put this into perspective, if someone makes a $50,000 year, they are saving only about $2,500 annually. That amount is barely enough to handle a minor car repair, let alone a medical emergency or unexpected job loss. This reality shows how fragile financial security really is for the average person and why one small setback can send them spiraling into debt. One of the reasons savings rates are so low is the lack of a clear plan. People often think they'll save what's left after covering their monthly expenses. But the problem is there's rarely anything left. Bills, entertainment, dining out, subscriptions, and impulse purchases tend to consume almost every dollar of income. Without prioritizing savings first, it becomes an afterthought. This is why so many surveys reveal that a large portion of the population has less than $100,000 saved. That number isn't just surprising. It's a reflection of a system where saving is never treated as urgent. Another factor is the misunderstanding of how much is actually necessary to feel secure. Many people assume that a few $1,000s in the bank is enough, but emergencies have a way of costing much more. A medical bill, home repair, or even a period of unemployment can wipe out years of minimal savings in a matter of weeks. Financial experts often suggest having at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved, but for the majority, even 1 month is a struggle. This gap between recommended savings and actual savings highlights the vulnerability most people face. Inflation also plays a quiet role in shrinking savings. As costs rise, people feel their money doesn't stretch as far, so they save less. When groceries, gas, and rent eat up more of the paycheck, there's less to set aside. But here's the catch. During times of inflation, saving actually becomes even more critical because emergencies don't stop when prices go up. If anything, they become more expensive to deal with. Unfortunately, instead of adjusting spending and preserving savings, many people lean on credit cards to fill the gap, which further weakens their financial foundation. There's also a psychological element at play. Saving feels slow and boring compared to spending, which gives instant gratification. Buying something new feels rewarding in the moment, while watching money sit in an account feels uneventful. This mindset makes saving less appealing. Even though it's the key to stability, people often convince themselves they'll save later when they make more money, but later never comes. The habit of not saving today usually carries into the future, regardless of income. The problem is magnified when people tie their sense of financial progress to visible markers like cars, clothes, and vacations rather than invisible ones like savings accounts. As long as they appear to be doing well, they feel comfortable. Investment, even if they have no financial cushion. But when a crisis strikes, appearances don't pay bills. Savings are what keep the lights on, the rent paid, and food on the table during tough times. Without them, people are forced into borrowing, which creates another cycle of financial stress. What makes the low savings rate so dangerous is that it leaves almost no room for error. Life is unpredictable, and emergencies are not a matter of if, but when. Without savings, people are exposed to risk at every turn. A flat tire, a broken appliance, or a sudden medical bill can derail everything. The truth is, saving isn't optional. It's a foundation that protects against the unexpected. Until more people start treating it as a priority rather than an afterthought, the average savings rate will remain dangerously low, and millions will continue to live one paycheck away from financial disaster. Debt has quietly become such a normal part of everyday life that most people don't even question it anymore. It's seen as something everyone has, whether it's a credit card balance, student loan, car payment, or mortgage. The problem is that this mindset has created a generation of people who believe debt is just the cost of living, investment, rather than realizing it's the single biggest obstacle keeping them from building wealth. For the average person, debt is not only draining their wallet, it's stealing their future freedom. Let's start with credit card debt, because this is where most people fall into trouble. The average credit card balance is over $6 an hour, and with interest rates often exceeding 20%, paying it off becomes a never-ending cycle. People make minimum payments thinking they're managing it, but in reality, the bulk of their money goes toward interest rather than the actual balance. This means years of payments without making real progress. A $1,000 purchase can easily turn into $2,000 or more over time simply because of interest. Yet people swipe their cards without considering the long-term cost. Student loans are another heavy burden weighing people down. Many graduates leave school owing tens of thousands of dollars before they even earn their first paycheck. For some, the debt stretches into six figures, delaying milestones like buying a home, starting a family, or even saving for retirement. While education can be valuable, the cost of financing it through debt often creates a financial anchor that takes decades to break free from. It's not uncommon for people to still be paying off student loans in their 40s or 50s, long after they've graduated. Then there are car payments, which have quietly become one of the most normalized forms of debt. The average car loan now stretches 6 to 7 years, with monthly payments that eat away at disposable income. People justify it by saying they need reliable transportation, but the reality is many are driving vehicles they can't truly afford. A car is a depreciating asset, meaning the moment you drive it off the lot, loses value, yet people lock themselves into years of payments that could have been avoided by choosing a less expensive option. Over a lifetime investment, this cycle of trading in cars and taking on new loans drains tens of thousands of dollars that could have been invested or saved. Mortgages are often considered good debt, and in some cases they can be. But even here, problems arise when people stretch themselves too thin just to afford a bigger house. They take on massive loans that consume the majority of their income, leaving little room for savings or investments. Add in property taxes, maintenance, and insurance, and what looked manageable on paper quickly turns into financial strain. While homeownership can build wealth over time, the wrong mortgage can create the same paycheck to paycheck cycle that traps so many. Bets, the most damaging part of debt isn't just the money, it's the mindset it creates. When you owe money, you're constantly working for your past rather than your future. Every paycheck is already spoken for before it even arrives. Instead of putting money toward investments, savings, or opportunities, it's going to banks and lenders. Debt robs people of options. It limits choices, increases stress, and creates a sense of financial slavery that's hard to escape. The normalization of debt has made people forget that there's another way. Living without credit card balances, without unnecessary loans, and without financing every purchase may not be glamorous, but it's what leads to true freedom. Every dollar not spent on interest is a dollar that can be saved, invested, or used to build real wealth. The problem is, until people recognize debt for what it really is, a financial trap, they'll continue to treat it as just part of life, and the cycle will continue to repeat across generations. Retirement is often seen as the reward for decades of hard work, but for the average person, the reality is far more unsettling than comforting. Most people are not even close to being prepared. Investment, and the numbers paint a bleak picture of the future. Almost half of working adults have nothing saved for retirement, not a single dollar. For those who do have some savings, the amounts are so low that they wouldn't last more than a couple of years. Investment, let alone an entire retirement. The idea of stepping away from work and living off savings has become a dream slipping out of reach for millions. One of the biggest issues is that people underestimate just how much they'll need. Many believe that a few tens of thousands will be enough, but when you consider rising healthcare costs, inflation, housing, and everyday expenses, that number barely scratches the surface. Experts estimate that to retire comfortably, a person needs anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million depending on lifestyle and location. Yet surveys show that the average 40-year-old has only around $60,000 in retirement savings, and those nearing retirement often have less than $200,000 at first glance. These numbers might seem like progress, but when you divide them over decades of retirement, they're nowhere near enough. Another problem is that people start too late. Retirement feels distant in your 20s and 30s. So many delay saving until they feel ready. But the power of compound interest is strongest when you begin early. Waiting even 10 years can mean the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars later. For example, someone saving $500 a month from age 25 to 65 can retire with over $1 million, but if they wait until 35 to start, they might end up with only half that amount. This delay creates a permanent disadvantage, one that's almost impossible to make up without massive contributions later in life. Job instability and lack of access to retirement plans also contribute to the problem. Many people work for companies that don't offer 401(k)s or pensions, leaving individuals to figure things out on their own. Even when plans are available, a surprising number of employees don't take full advantage, often missing out on free money from employer matching contributions. This lack of participation compounds the issue, leaving them further behind with every passing year. Debt also eats away at retirement potential. When a large portion of income goes toward credit card payments, car loans, or mortgages, there's little left to save. Some people enter retirement still owing money, which means they're using their limited savings to pay off old debts rather than supporting their lifestyle. This not only reduces financial security, but also adds unnecessary stress during what should be the most relaxing phase of life. The consequences of poor retirement planning are severe. Instead of enjoying freedom and independence, many retirees are forced to continue working well into their 70s and 80s. Some pick up part-time jobs, not because they want to, but because they have no choice. Others drastically cut back their lifestyle, living with constant financial anxiety. In the worst cases, people become dependent on government assistance or family members just to survive. Investment. The shocking truth about retirement readiness is that it's not just about numbers on a statement, it's about quality of life. Without adequate preparation, people face decades of uncertainty and struggle rather than peace of mind. Investment. The sooner individuals recognize this gap and take action, the better their chances of escaping the trap. Retirement isn't something that just happens. It has to be built intentionally through consistent saving, wise investing, investment, and disciplined choices made over many years. Those who fail to act early risk finding out too late that the future they envisioned is nothing more than a financial illusion.